The Locust was a peculiar departure from the typical humanoid mech design. Body and head were fused into a single flat fuselage suspended between very long, digitigrade canted legs. The slenderness of the lower legs and the splayed claw-like design of the flanged feet gave the Locust the appearance of a giant flightless bird. Despite its name, the mech could not jump, but it was easily the fastest of all battle mechs, capable of speeds at up to 165 km per hour on open terrain. Compared to other mechs, however, it was poorly armed. The sleek long barrel of a single laser jutted from beneath the Locust's cockpit section, and two tiny arms extended from the belly bore a pair of heavy machine guns. The Locust had sacrificed weapons for the twin battlefield advantages of speed and armor. Though shorter and more compact, the Locust carried thicker armor than the Wasp and was far more difficult to hit. Spotted across the battlefields and planetary militias of the Inner Sphere, the Locust stands, or more appropriately runs, as one of the most identifiable battle mechs in the universe. As one of the originals, later unseen, then reseen, and then finally reimagined by the incredibly talented Anthony Scroggins, the Locust is a tiny 20-ton terror that seems to be almost unanimously beloved. The LCT-1V Locust was initially designed by the engineers at Bergen Industries on Ares for sale to the Capellan Confederation in $24.99. It proved to be such a useful machine that very quickly the demand for the plucky mech outpaced production. When the Locust was ordered by the Star League Defense Force as a general purpose and scouting mech, additional production lines were set up on New Earth just to fill their ranks. By the time Amaris launched his coup, there were also Locust production lines set up among all four of the periphery territorial states. By the time settled space was plunged into the barbarity of the First Succession War, the Locust was everywhere. Though many of the factory lines sustained damage as a result of Amaris's coup and the collapse of the Star League, production of the Locust never completely ended. For example, the Bergen Industries lines on Ares continued to work at breakneck speed to make as many Locusts as possible for the Capellan Confederation armed forces. There were battlefield reports that included tales of lances or even companies of Locusts descending into battle in desperate attempts to take or hold ground. As it turned out, it earned its name after all. The first Grey Death battle mech emerged from the forest less than 100 meters from Zellner's position, striding out from among the trees and into the middle of the infantry encampment. Soldiers bolted and ran, a few in armor, some wearing fatigues or even underwear. The mech, a Locust, strode through the camp with the look of some ugly, demonic insect 8 meters tall, balanced on two slender legs that stilted across campfires and tents and scattering men. Zellner could see the black and gray skull emblem painted on its upper works. The mech's twin laser mounts opened fire, and men began to fall. Before we get too far down the road, we need to sort out what the deal is with this little battle mech that made it so popular. The original concept was a mech that could be speedy and could fill a variety of roles like reconnaissance and policing in an urban environment where larger units would be inappropriate. As with so many other light mechs, their survival depended upon speed over all else. Though the Locust 1V lacked jump jets, it could reach a top speed of 129.6 km per hour, which was faster than any heavier mechs could go at the time that the Locust was introduced. With just 4 tons of armor, even just a few glancing hits with larger weapons like a large laser or PPC could send the mech sprawling. ABM, always be moving. The life of the Locust Mechwarrior is glorious, yet tends to be short. So it's good to have an acronym or two to speed up conversations. Tick-tock, my friend. The Locust 1V was armed with the tried-and-true Martel medium laser located in the center torso. For closer range fights against infantry and light vehicles, a machine gun was placed into the right and left arms, which were really just pods as the arms lacked hand or elbow actuators. Though the damage from the Locust 1V was nothing to write home about, it was dangerous enough to be effective. As we've discussed previously, there's value in being just available, and sometimes you win just by showing up. Of course, showing up they did. During the Succession Wars, in several notable cases, swarms of Locusts, along with other fast-moving light mechs, were sent out to cause chaos after bursting through frontline units. Though this often resulted in very high casualties and piles of destroyed Locusts, it did occasionally result in success. In one of my favorite little snippets from the classic 3025 technical readout, Lieutenant Martha Mavries gained fame in her Locust as part of the 32nd Lyran Guards support regiment when she started skipping to the consequences phase of combat by stomping her mech onto enemy hovercraft and light vehicles after chasing them down. Now that's thinking with your feet. The Locust hooked a sharp left as it reached the very edge of the woodland and sprinted across the front of Red Staples' position, dodging in and out of the sparse evergreens lining the edge of the plains. Hanlon's crosshairs flashed red as he tracked the path of the small, speeding BattleMech, running well outside his maximum range. Static cracked his neurohelmet headset a half-second before Captain Dvorak's voice broke through the Red Staples comm channel. "Turner, sing. Burn that scout." After more than 500 years of service, with more than a dozen major manufacturers and countless unnamed chop shops cobbling together Locusts from spare parts, the Mech is as common in the 32nd century as ever before. It served and currently serves in the militaries of every house unit and periphery state, and there have been countless variants, both official and field refits made out of necessity. It's cheap to buy, cheap to repair, and more often than not, the Mechwarrior inside of its cockpit would be harder to replace than the Mech itself. As with previous videos, where there are dozens of different variants, we're not going to be able to cover them all for this short-form content. However, I will hit upon some notable ones, and those I think give us a better picture and understanding of what the Locust is, and how it can impact the battlefields of the 31st and 32nd centuries. The first of these variants is the LCT-1E Locust, first produced in 2811 in response to demands from the Capellan state for an upgraded Locust with additional firepower at lower cost and without concern for ammunition. Bergen Industries went to work pulling the 2 machine guns from the Mech and replacing them with an additional Martel medium laser and 2 Magna small lasers. The overall look of the Locust would change with the 1E as well, as those lasers were installed into the arms to allow the Mech a full Alpha Strike potential into the rear arc. Unfortunately, the cute little medium laser in the CT was gone. Too bad, so sad. When the first Locust 1Es hit the battlefields in the last decade of the First Succession War, Bergen Industries received positive feedback. Even with the additional lasers, the 1E could run at top speed, Alpha Strike, and still not overheat unless there were outside environmental factors. The 16 damage Alpha Strike was respectable for a 20-ton mech of that time. Most of the Locust 1Es ended up in Capellan units on the active front against Davion forces, and from available accounts they performed really well. Not being tied to logistics trains to keep those machine guns firing allowed for units of Locusts to operate far from home and cause chaos behind enemy lines. It was even reported that the Capellan victories over House Davion units on Castleton, Ulaanbaatar, and Farwell would not have been possible without the swarms of 1Es running around and causing trouble wherever they could. Overall, the Locust 1E is a great version of the Locust, even though I'm a bit of a purist who prefers those 1V machine guns. The 2 medium lasers are hard to turn down, and that full 16-point Alpha Strike is hard to resist. It scores well in the completely arbitrary and subjective utility and fun scales, and is fair in the strength category. For our next variant, we're going to travel with Kerensky's Exodus fleet out into the periphery. Among the countless other items taken on their journey, many SLDF Locusts were nestled in cradles ready to be put to later use. The first attempt at upgrading the Locust with clan technology is referred to as the Locust C. First deployed in 2836, the Locust C isn't the all-in clan machine that we would see later with the Locust 2C. Instead, it was a modest weapons loadout refit. The original medium laser and twin machine guns of the 1V were swapped out for a Clan Tech medium pulse laser and 2 ER small lasers. This gave the Locust C a reach out to 12 hexes with the accurate medium pulse laser, and at closer ranges with a respectable 17 damage Alpha Strike with the smalls. The more accurate pulse laser was a good thing to have when in combat with other fast-moving vehicles or light mechs. That advantage very likely came into play quite often. Even though it lacks fun things like endosteel or ferrofibrous armor, the Locust C is a solid pick for battles taking place during Operation Klondike or even the Golden Century. However, by the clan invasion, it was extremely unlikely that any of these ancient stopgap refits would still be in use by the clans. In the years since the invasion, the Locust C has started to show up in markets across the Inner Sphere, and it's likely the inspiration for the later variant created by Defiance Industries. Overall, the Locust C does well with strength, utility, and fun on the scales. If you want to add some clan spice to the mix without going all in on the Locust 2C, give the Locust C a try. Speaking of fancy new technologies, our next Locust variant is our obligatory Helm memory core upgrade, designated the Locust 3M. It's waterproof, comes in a variety of pastel color. What? Okay, fine. Alright, so it's not that 3M, no. Employing both endosteel and 3 tons of ferrofibrous armor, the Locust 3M maintains that 129.6 km top speed with the standard 160 engine, but it had a little bit more mass to play with for equipment. The classic Martel medium laser was retained, but the 2 machine guns were sacrificed upon the altar so that the anti-missile system could be installed in the left arm, along with case for the ammunition. Additionally, 4 small lasers were split evenly between the 2 arms. The total possible damage for this close-range alpha strike is a respectable 17, but the feelings concerning the 3M are likely going to boil down to how you feel about that anti-missile system. That's a full 2-ton expenditure on that AMS that can fire 12 times. I think if you're going to run the AMS on a light mech, the case is too much. You're better off just relying upon your speed and the AMS itself to keep you from becoming atomized. I would have dropped the case and 1 small laser in favor of a second medium laser, but that's just the opinion of one amphibian. Our next variant arrives on the scene in 3066 thanks to the machinations of the Word of Blake, who promised to purchase the entire first-year production run if Corian Enterprises went ahead with the refit. The Locust 5M benefited from endosteel, ferrofibrous armor, and an improved top speed of 130 km per hour thanks to the installation of a Hermes 240XL engine. For those of you playing the game at home, that's a 12-18 movement profile. This Locust has the zoomies. Armed with an ER medium laser in the center torso and 4 ER small lasers split between the arms, the Locust 5M once again hits that 17 damage point. And all of this was done without having to cut the armor like with the 3M. The only downside is the heat generation of all the ER lasers, which can push the mech 5 heat into the red, firing an alpha strike at full run. Some heat management will be necessary if you're that deep into the fight. While I am typically not a big fan of the Project Phoenix refits, in this case the Locust 5M is just an all-around better mech than its previous incarnations thanks to its use of appropriate technologies. Strength and utility are high with the 5M, and fun takes a slight hit due to the heat concerns, unless you're into that sort of thing. Our next variant is our wildcard entry, and what a shock comes to us from the periphery states of the Magistracy of Canopus and the Taurian Concordat. Who could have guessed? The Locust 5V takes us back to a standard engine in the original 912 movement profile. However, it does use 4 tons of ferrofibrous armor and has 10 double heat sinks. The 2 primary weapons are a pair of ER medium lasers found in the center torso, but the stars of the show are the 2 rocket launcher 10 packs split between the left and right arms. They're loud, fire a lot of rockets, and can do up to 20 damage in a single shot. With the full alpha strike, the damage is pushed to a possible 30. While not horrific, a single shot to the back armor of a mech could be debilitating. I think though the real strength here is in numbers. A lance of Locust 5Vs could headhunt very effectively against an unsuspecting target. The strength is high due to those one-shot rockets, but utility does take a hit for the same reason, though the fun is high due to the prospect of taking down a heavy or assault mech with a pack of screeching locusts. Life in the periphery can be a wild experience. In one of our 2 IlClan era variants, the Locust 7V is our latest and greatest from Bergen Industries, who sought to add the appropriate upgrades while still keeping the mech familiar to mech warriors who completed their training on or had experience with the original 1V. It first stepped from the assembly lines in 3102. I'm happy to report that the 7V benefits from the use of endosteel and the installation of a Nissan 200 light fusion engine. This allowed for a shift in the movement profile up to 10-15, which is great for the mech that depends upon speed for survival. The 10 heatsinks are now the double variety, which is great for retaining that happy-go-lucky, no overheating lifestyle. 3.5 tons of heavy ferrofibrous armor provides 69 points of armor protection, which is comparable to the 4 tons of the original plate armor, but at the cost of 21 internal locations. The 7V's medium X-pulse laser located in the center torso is reminiscent of the original Martel medium laser, though with that X-pulse technology, it can reach out to 9 hexes with the pulse laser's improved accuracy. The machine guns on the left and right arms were replaced with mag-shot Gauss rifles that can do 2 damage out to 9 hexes in the same range profile as the medium X-pulse laser. While the alpha strike damage from the Locust 7V is a modest 10, the big speed increase makes it all the more difficult to put down. The mech's strength suffers a bit in comparison to other variants, but the utility and fun are both high on this swift update to the classic design. It's more than worthy for consideration for your IlClan era list. Our last official variant is also brand new as of 3128, and it arrives thanks to Defiance Industries, who wanted to take the tried and tested classic BattleMech and update it with some of their latest technological bells and whistles. The Locust 7S is a mixed inner sphere tech design, which benefits from inner sphere endosteel and a clan grade 240XL fusion engine, which pushes the top speed of the mech to 194 kilometers per hour. For those playing at home, that's a 12-18 movement profile. 10 double heat sinks keep the 7S cool, and 4 tons of ferrofibrous armor provide those typical 69 points of protection. For weaponry, Defiance was eager to show off their brand new C9M extended range medium laser. Since it's clan rated, the laser can reach out to 15 hexes and does its 7 damage. Not too shabby for a mech that's going to be zooming across the battlefield like Scipio with his hair on fire. Backing up the ER medium laser are the traditional left and right arm machine guns, which are fed by half ton of ammunition in the left torso protected by case. While not putting up big numbers with any alpha striking, the Locust 7S's incredible speed and range with that ER medium laser more than make up for it. This variant could be a tremendous pain in the butt for anyone who wants a more traditional mech versus mech slugfest in an open field. Don't give that to them, make them work for it. If you need a scout mech that can really move quickly and throw a wrench into the works of your enemy's plans, the Locust 7S may be the IlClan era light mech for you. Now, of course, we're going to need a Mech Frog variant of the Locust, so let's see what we can do with this 20-ton gem. The Locust 1MF takes advantage of some newer inner sphere technology to pack a considerable punch while also equipping some defensive countermeasures. Starting with the original Locust 1V, I tossed it into the bin and forged an entirely new one from Endosteel and a 160 XL engine. It maintains that 8-12 movement profile. 10 double heat sinks will keep the mech cool at all times, and 4 tons of light ferrofibrous armor provide 67 points of protection, which is slightly better than the original. The original weapons loadout was completely swapped out. The MF's weaponry consists of a trio of ER medium lasers aided by a targeting computer. These give the Locust decent range and accurate fire up close, where the Locust is usually going to be wanting to end up once the lead starts flying. To aid in the mech survival, a Guardian ECM was added to the left torso and an anti-missile system added to the right torso. While I was tempted to go with jump jets instead, the Locust really should run and enjoy that 12 hex top speed. Overall, I think the Locust 1MF does a good job of balancing speed and power with the 3 ER medium lasers aided by the targeting computer. The ground rumbled and the snow shifted. A dark shape emerged from down the slope. A Locust striding effortlessly across the snow. The bird-like mech angled toward him, the markings of the 10th Merrick militia clearly visible on its haunches. Its chin-mounted laser flashed, and up the slope the rocks exploded. The trooper ran across the snow, but the Locust's weapons tracked him. Machine guns chattered, and the Indutian collapsed. So why do we love the Locust? Or maybe I should ask, why is the Locust seemingly so universally beloved? It's one of those classic BattleTech mechs that people always seem to have at least one story of how it hit way above its weight. It shows up so often in BattleTech fiction that I had to be selective about which awesome quote I wanted to include. I love how often it's written as a much more imposing and powerful machine than it actually is, often from the point of view of the infantryman or civilian who is suffering its wrath. The Locust was the starter mech for 1 million Mechwarriors in-universe and many thousands of BattleTech players included in their first Lance when they were breaking out the BattleTech box sets over the years. It's not the fastest, toughest, or even the most adorable, I see you there Valkyrie, but it is undoubtedly a fun battle mech and one that I'm happy to say it's easy to love. If you have a favorite Locust variant or have a story to share, please let me know in the comments below and we can keep the conversation going. Thank you as always for coming by to talk some BattleTech. If you think the video was worthy, let me know by hitting that like or even subscribe button so that I can see a little number go up and enjoy the dopamine hit. An additional thanks to channel members who have taken that extra step and are directly supporting the channel for these videos. You're awesome and I appreciate it. Until we meet again, take care and go make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.